Hi, and I guess welcome to the first episode of, I'm not even sure what I'm going to end up calling this. I just need to get started, dive in with both feet, I guess. Um, I thought a long time about how I even wanted to start this and like where and all that. And I finally realized that the best place to start is probably the beginning. So just going back to the first journal entries that I started writing. This is going to be in three parts. I am going to start with the raw journals, which are very raw and rough, personal journaling for the purposes of therapy, basically, under a situation that I lived through over the course of five, like plus-ish years. Um, and so I will start with the raw journals, as I said. I also then this ended up becoming the development of a hypothesis regarding what is going on inside the heads of people with narcissistic personality disorder. So, moving from raw journals into developing my thesis, which ended up becoming a book that I actually self-published a couple of years ago. And I'm doing this, I'm kind of working on doing a more thorough, like second edition, where I'd also include these things in between raw journals and then what ended up becoming the book are also what I ended up calling anecdotes, which were actual essays that I wrote regarding particular topics that had to do with my experience, my personal, like actual objective experience. So things like being taken advantage of at this job and um, certain interactions that I decided to kind of like sink my teeth into a little bit deeper and things like that. So the three parts. So like I said, there's going to be raw journals, and I'll just start there. At some point during the journaling process, I started writing the anecdotes and also developing my hypothesis, developing my thesis. So there is going to be overlap, and so as I'm going through these and reading, there's going to be a little bit of like reminiscing, a little color commentary, and so it might get a little bit repetitive because, as I said, things from the journals that ended up just being more developed in the anecdotes or being becoming part of the book. I'm not going to tell you what the name of the book is because it's part of this progress. Like I said, as part of this process, developing it into basically the larger, I'm going to include all of this in what would be a like quote unquote second edition sort of version. I kind of want to leave the original book in the past for posterity's sake and just be focusing on this project in particular. So without further ado, as I said, like starting at the beginning is a very nice place to start. So we'll just go into the raw journals, of which you can, there are several, and there's a little over. I started out when I first started, I was very particular about each day. And then eventually that just kind of got thrown by the wayside as I started actually like writing the anecdotes and working on the thesis. So excuse me. So, like I said, the raw journals are quite rough. I have also made the executive decision to not censor what I was writing in the journal. I'm not going to censor myself. I'm going to read. There's going to be some rough language, things people don't agree with, et cetera, et cetera. And I feel like for my own catharsis in this project, I owe it to myself to just let it flow, basically. So that's what I'm going to do. So starting here, the first journal is August 7th of 2018. So just to give a little bit of background before just diving into the middle of the situation, this was an individual that I met because I know that a lot of this stuff does end up appearing somewhere. Um, that the This is a person that I met January of 2013. Um, that I thought it was like on the bus. It was just a kind of like a random, seemingly one-off experience. Didn't think I'd ever see him again. Ended up running into him again later on, and then it ended up as our like running into each other, et cetera, et cetera. It ended up turning into where he basically offered me a live-in position to work for him after he had suffered a medical emergency incident, and was like, hey, like I had a stroke. I'm supposed to be on this particular diet and whatever. I know like you're looking for a place to live. I was homeless at the time, I was timing out of a shelter, so legally you can only be in a shelter for 2 years here. And so I was running out of time, and he was like, "Hey, I just had this stroke. Why don't you just move in with me?" The problem with moving in with him is that he lives in federal housing that is run by the state, and it's not technically legal for you to have, you can get approved for live-in help, which was a process that I later found out like he hadn't actually gone through, and that me living with him was actually something that needed to have been hidden and kept under wraps. Part of the reason that I am doing this is because I feel like it was incredibly fucked up that I was, and this will get more well developed as, like I said, like as I'm going on. I'm just kind of glazing over details and stuff on purpose here. Um, that for 5 years, I was technically illegally living in federal housing that was ran by the state and was never caught. No one ever seemed to care, despite the fact that I was not really happy or comfortable in the situation. It was just quite strange. And so this is why I have decided to just go ahead and publish probably like every last detail of this experience, this bullshit that I went through basically because for several reasons. So for one reason too is like because I feel like on the one hand, while I personally feel like it would fall under the category of trafficking, it wasn't so violent or serious or like physiologically harmful. It's almost like trafficking light. So it's a sorry, I don't really have much of a choice but to record where I'm recording, and so there might actually also be some noise issues as things are going on, but I'll try to keep that to a minimum. Um, basically, um, while I feel like it could technically be categorized as trafficking, it doesn't involve a lot of like triggering experiences, I guess is a good way to put it. Like there's no like physical or sexual abuse, or it's actually a little bit more just financial and like psychological, like psychosocial abuse in a lot of ways. And so I feel like it's a good way to exemplify to people like that this is what it looks like when someone's kind of being like a vulnerable person is being taken advantage of. Basically, like I said, it's like this kind of is on the cusp between just being like a toxic slash abusive relationship and actually being illegal. All right, so without further ado, let's just go ahead and dive into this first one. I'm a little bit like nervous. It's weird because I haven't read these in like 6 years, so I'm also like in a certain state because I haven't really relived this situation, and it's like there's this part of me that's like I want to, but I also just don't want to. Like, but anyway, all right, so here we go. August 7th, 2018. You come in the door and I say good morning, but you do not respond. Then you begin woo woo wooing as usual. Look what you got, you say in a baby voice. All right, so now it was like this kind of triggering experience of like, okay, enough's enough. I can't take this shit anymore. I've got to start at least putting it into journaling. So when I was in college, so I do have a bachelor's in psychology and a bachelor's in philosophy. And so when I was doing the psych degree, there was an experiment that one of the professors was doing that you could get paid for that was in 3 parts, and it actually had to do with journaling as a therapeutic experience, right? So like you can actually just get it out, just write it down, just do whatever because it is what it is, and it does actually work. So I was like, let me just employ this technique that I actually happen to know exists, and just instead of, and because as it will become kind of clear, like there would have been no way for me to have, um, I wouldn't have been able to have gone to like say like a therapy session every week to be talking to somebody about the situation because he was so far up my ass. And so it was the situation was very much like, for whatever reason, this guy had the impression that we were just like peas in a pod and like just thick as thieves and close as close can, it's like that he would not have it, for whatever reason he couldn't comprehend that like this is not the experience for me that it is for him, and I don't even understand where he gets the impression that this is the sort of experience that he thinks it is. Um, and so, like I said, I feel like it'll be some of the things that I want to say about the experience will not be, I don't want to say like won't be well received, or, I don't want to like set any sort of weird expectations or whatever. But basically, I feel like it would be easier for other people to have some kind of knowledge and understand a little bit of a background before starting to talk about a little bit more of like the deeper issues that I think were going on here. And so I'll just leave it at that. So, like, what he would do is when he would come back in, like, let's say, like, if he went to go get the mail or something, so like the mail box, it was a big, like, high-rise apartment building, like 22 floors, on the very first floor, right outside, there was the big mailboxes, whatever. So it was like if he would go down to get the mail, when he would come back in the door, he would come in and just, he'd be like, woo, 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 like like the way that you would maybe mimic barking to a dog. It was strange. I don't even know where or why he picked up this habit of doing it. Um, but it was very strange. And it would be every time he would come in the door, it was like he acted like I had been waiting with bated breath for him to come back and whatever. And it was just like, you can this guy not just like live his life? It's like I'm here living with him just for the sake of basically being a human life alert bracelet, like, making his meals, making sure he's not just living on spam and butter and whatever. But realistically, and this will be one of the anecdotes. So when I say like that the anecdotes were kind of more like well developed essays about particular aspects of the experience, so companionship services is actually something that's covered under federal labor law. This is the labor law that allows you to like pay babysitters $1 an hour per child, basically, is the idea that someone's job basically just existing in another person's space to just kind of facilitate their continued existence, right, is called companionship services. And like I said, I'll go into more detail about it in one of the anecdotes. So technically, this is a legal job, but the job is literally just I live with this person in case they have another medical emergency. There's someone here to call 911. I do have a background in first aid, CPR, all of that. Um, and being a live-in caregiver for people who are not only both with elderly people and people with developmental and intellectual disabilities, which was another thing that I thought was really strange. I was oddly almost overqualified to be doing this, and so yes, a lot of this writing is also the defense mechanism of intellectualization. But I mean, it is what it is. It's let me turn it into a case study of investigative journalism and do something with this experience that benefits me, because the experience itself sure as hell didn't. Anyway, so that's the background of this very first introductory paragraph here, right? And that the look what you got, and he would talk at me like that a lot as well. Um, I'm not a dog, I respond as you place a wrapped donut on top of my coffee cup. Any normal person would be able to recognize the irritation in my voice. But you, my friend, are not normal. You laugh. I don't know if it's because you just don't understand what's going on or because you're just an asshole. Margaret went across the street and got donuts, you say, though I really don't care. With my ever expanding middle, I actually wish that you would stop bringing this junk food here to tempt me. Are we going to do that check thing today? You ask, with your goofy looking wide eyes and open smile that I think you believe makes you look cute, but actually just betrays how immature, possibly even slightly mentally retarded, but definitely somehow mentally ill you really are. To be clear, goofy is an understatement. Your face was artificially lit up like a child that was just told the family is going to Disney World for Christmas rather than an adult who knows full well that we need to do that check thing today. I don't remember off the top of my head what that check thing was. I just remember this being somewhat of a debacle. Um, he had financial control issues. So there are actually quite a few check things or bank things that ended up going on over the course of this. So like it's almost more, this could be any number of a dozen experiences that I don't remember, but um, just to be clear, again, even though I said like to be clear, goofy is an understatement. Um, I'm being quite literal. This is not hyperbole. So, like for the purposes of the journaling experience of being therapeutic, you have to be authentic. So when I say it's like there was something about his mannerisms and the way that he carried himself that was literally unbelievably sugar-coated and artificially fake. Um, so just imagine like someone who is a poorly skilled actor attempting to feign being excited and looking forward to doing something. Okay. So for like stars mean we're going to shift one way or another. So I have asked myself countless times if his behavior irritates me because it's his behavior or if the behavior actually annoys me and that's why I don't like him. My brother inspired me to this way of thinking years ago. There was a television show called Switched at Birth in which two girls had been obviously switched at birth. How on earth the parents didn't realize that the babies weren't theirs on appearance alone was baffling enough to make the show ridiculous. But one of the girls, her name was Bay, like the horse, was absolutely off her chain. The show on the whole, although rather unbelievable, was sufferable enough save this character. I lamented to my brother about my dislike for her and grumbled almost every time she had a line in the dialogue. Finally, Damien said, I think you don't like anything she does because you don't like her, to which I replied, I'm pretty sure it's the other way around. I don't like her because I don't like anything she does. We shrugged it off and went about our lives. Fast forward to the present, and I find myself imagining that someone whom I know I like is the one that has engaged in a particular irritating behavior. Sometimes I'm able to forgive and forget, but more often than not, this has helped me realize that he truly is defective. Right. So, like I said, like if I imagine that, like if my brother said that to me, would I just laugh it off and think it's funny, or is that actually a weird thing to say? Right. And more often than not, I would say 90% of the time the determination was that's the sort of thing that would make me start second guessing my relationship with somebody, even if it was someone that I unconditionally loved or like that I genuinely cared about, or even like a position of authority, right? There'd be like if a boss, had said that to me in some other job, would that make me want to quit, or call HR, that sort of a thing. And so, like I said, that it definitely helped frame what he was doing. The most frustrating thing about him is that it's impossible to tell whether he doesn't understand or remember certain things because he didn't even hear what you said or because he genuinely just doesn't understand. So he was also, and I saw the paperwork from his hearing doctor, so I know that this is accurate. He was completely deaf in his left ear, so he didn't wear a hearing aid or anything in the left ear. He wore a hearing aid in his right ear, which with the hearing assistance, I think it said like something around like 60% of his hearing. So he was definitely hard of hearing. Okay, I keep making the mistake of letting my phone fall asleep while I'm screen recording. So anyway, I apologize. I'll get better as things go on. It is what it is. So anyway, as I was saying, he was definitely hard of hearing, which made it impossible to tell sometimes because over time it's like you get a feel for like his hearing is actually like relatively okay. So like sometimes it would be hard to tell whether or not he actually couldn't hear you or if he just couldn't understand what you were saying. So like from an intellectual perspective, right? I'm not sure if it's a hearing issue or an actual lack of intellectual capability issue, and that's going to come up quite a few times. Um, Often, however, he will ask me to keep my voice down in an aggravated manner when I'm trying to speak louder for him to hear me, usually after several attempts to explain something in a normal tone of voice. Usually that's because what he doesn't understand is something so mundane that I simply can't believe that it doesn't compute. Case in point, the aforementioned check thing. He doesn't really seem to know how banking works, period. And anytime he doesn't like what the bank is doing, or anywhere else for that matter, this is a highly generalizable aspect of his personality, it quote unquote doesn't make sense. It then takes an act. So, like I said, it's not that he can't understand. It doesn't benefit him, or it doesn't fit into his convenience plans, right, or expectations, and so it just doesn't make sense. He thinks the whole world should be laid out in front of him on a red carpet, silver platter with rose petals and unicorn farts. Like it was so bizarre. It then takes an act of Job-esque patience to explain it to him. Often, this has to be done several times. Usually, it has to do with not understanding the fee for paying utility bills at the bank. Today, however, it was the $5 per day fee on an overdraft on top of the 30% flat fee. Overdrafting his bank account is something he does frequently, and to be honest, I think he believes that it's a courtesy the bank has given him in return for some unknown virtue. Throughout this discussion, with the aid of a copy of the terms and conditions of his checking account, I came to understand that he doesn't know what an ATM is, how that differs from getting cash back at a check stand, so like at a POS at the grocery store, right? And that banks don't want you to be overdrafting your account, protected or not. He interrupted my explanation multiple times to argue the sense of what I was about to say, possibly because he was just absolutely refused to believe that that was the fact of the matter. At the climax, I'm not even going to pretend like I understood my own sentence here. He interrupted my explanation multiple times to argue the sense of what I was about to say, possibly because he just absolutely refused to believe that that was the fact. Oh, so like one of those like I already know what you're about to tell me, and I'm going to go ahead and tell you that that's not right because dot dot dot, and it's like, but it is right. You just don't like it, right? Excuse me. At the climax, when I had stated definitively that the fees were for his overdraft, he responded with, yes, but it doesn't make sense. To which I finally had to firmly insist that this was, in fact, the answer to his question, not me trying to make sense of what he was saying to me. Right? So, have you ever had a conversation with somebody who just refused absolutely to believe that? That what you were telling them is the truth, whether they like it or not, just because, um, sorry, that was like the weirdest experience because I'm sitting outside one of the like municipal buildings, like downtown, one of the main like city office buildings, and the woman who just walked out and passed me was the HR manager at the job I worked while this shit was going on. You cannot make this shit up. I swear to God, my life is so weird. Anyway, so we had an eye contact, like brief, hi, how are you moment. Don't worry, she's a very pleasant person. But that was just odd. I haven't seen like anyone from that time of my life in years. And then I literally start this project and boom, like, wow, wow. Okay. Anyway, she looks great too. I think she's lost like 75 pounds. Good for her. Anyway, um, just say she looks fantastic. Um, Anyway, where was I at? Um, so that this practice was not uncommon, that he was not being personally brutalized in any way, that his confusion, while reasonable at first, has become completely ridiculous. Well, the last part not out loud to his face, but I'll get to that glitch soon enough. His reality seems to be so diluted that it is sometimes astonishing that he has managed to accomplish anything in life without extreme amounts of guidance. Perhaps this is why he is virtually devoid of family and friends. This is another highly generalizable principle in his life, that he is entitled to having things the way he perceives the world works or to what makes him happy, safe, secure, and comfortable. I am not sure if he is just a full-blown narcissist or if he was heavily spoiled growing up or if he was somehow isolated from society in some way, such as a long prison sentence. Don't laugh. Based on certain misconceptions about the contemporary world versus, say, 20 or 30 years ago, it's as though he has spent a large chunk of the technological age completely oblivious to it. I know that people in prison aren't really that disconnected from the world, but I also don't think he has friends or family that would have given two shits and a rat's ass that he was thrown in the hole. Ergo, no one to visit him with the latest news or send noodles. He certainly doesn't talk too much of anyone outside of the building. Maybe once or twice every few months I hear him on the phone with someone he tells me is friend or family. This person usually wants something that he is allegedly able to provide, assistance with a computer malfunction, television reception, or legal matters. And therein lies the rub. How can someone that people seem to trust to call upon for these types of things have so much trouble with other equally contemporary tasks or procedures? How can you spend all day on Facebook, but no one has ever told you that typing in all caps is considered shouting and is therefore frowned upon in normal conversation, much less in lengthy TLDR posts? How can you repair televisions? I've seen him full on take them apart and put them back together again. program television, set up antennas and cable boxes, know the difference between DVD and Blu-ray, etc., but can't navigate Netflix or Hulu without an obscene level of guidance. Don't know that Showtime is a movie network just like Cinemax, and that being Cinemax, Showtime, or HBO has virtually nothing to do with the individual movies that are available on those networks. For example, Cinemax didn't make the movie that is available through a subscription to Cinemax. I don't understand the difference between a television show and a movie. They're all movies, nor how episodic television works, movies with a continuation. And perhaps the weirdest of them all, that actors don't work exclusively for studios anymore. I think it's more odd that I know that they used to than that he doesn't know that this practice stopped a long time ago. So the parenthetical quotes is what he calls things. So everything that you would watch as a movie, and then there would be movies with a continuation. And so like sometimes we would watch a movie, a film, a feature film, and then he would ask like, "Oh, that was good. Is there a continuation?" And I'd be like, "No, there's no sequel." And he's like, "No, like is there a continuation?" And I'd be like, "No, that was just a standalone movie." And he'd be like, "Oh, so there's no next part, right?" And it anyway, so it just certain certain things seem to click really well, and other things that you would think would go hand in hand with those things didn't click at all. That's what's his name? Leonardo DiCaprio. Yeah, Leonardo DiCaprio. I thought he was with Sony, as that's how he pronounced Sony Pictures, but I guess he's with Warner Brothers. Actors haven't worked for a studio for a long time. Aha! Brief pause. A few moments later. Yeah, I didn't know Leonardo DiCaprio isn't with Sony anymore. How does the global concept go right over your head? How is it that that was an actual conversation, right? He'll take a beat and think about it, and then he'll still respond with whatever he believed before is still just the truth. Like, you literally couldn't have a conversation with this man. How is it that somehow everything that is new to him gets reinterpreted in his mind to match his desired or understood worldview? It's as if nothing is modified by his experience. He can receive input from more than 50% of his interactions that he is odd, incorrect, or just plain dumb, or just kind of like pathetic. He kind of embarrassed himself a lot. That'll come up as this goes on, that it's amazing that he opens his mouth almost every time a thought crosses his mind. If he isn't speaking it, he's typing it, which is why I am somewhat grateful that he thinks he is some sort of legal eagle political guru. He spends a lot of time on the internet writing political rants on Facebook, submitting testimony on bills. I've come across him in my daily goings on, but more on that in a bit. And getting himself email blocked by the entire state.gov domain. Seriously, his word, not mine. He say seriously, like all the time. Like that, it's like seriously. He would think that he was telling you like this world-shattering information, and when you were just looking at him like, yeah, half the world fucking knows this already. He was like, oh, seriously, because he would think that people just didn't believe him a lot, and it's like, dude, you're not that exceptional. But anyway, um, oh, and in case you're wondering, his Gmail is broken. He does not understand that he has been blocked by the state representatives and senators on a private individual basis, and that is why he cannot send email to them. I guess he doesn't read the replies from Mailer Damon that explicitly say that's the case. So when he says that it's like you've either been blocked by this email address or sent, like it literally says, when you like try to send and it would send you back those Mailer Damon emails. It literally says in the email why you can't send email to that address. That's how I know this is true. But his Gmail is broken. He asked me to help him fix his Gmail. Now, this puts me in a really interesting position, right? Because the answer to the question is read the email. The email is telling you that you have been blocked by the recipient, by the intended recipient. Um, but instead, I have to fix his entire Gmail. Like, the spread of this, right? Because it can't possibly be the case that my intended recipient has blocked receiving emails from me. My entire Gmail account is broken, and my personal live-in assistant, whom I barely trust to fry bacon, is now expected to somehow technologically re-engineer my fucking Gmail account. You want to talk about the Twilight Zone? These 5 years of my life was like being turned inside out, going through the wormhole to get to the other side of the universe to live on another planet. Twilight Zone my ass. Now, I know I promised some backstory to this unfortunate circumstance, so the rest of this chapter is devoted to my story. Suffice it to say for now that overall, he's not a bad guy, sort of a benevolent narcissist, if you will. He laughs often, often inappropriately, but he laughs often. He seems oblivious or impervious to 99% of the input that indicates he's off, and overall, he's a nice guy. There's a lot of unsolicited and bad advice, unnecessary observations, especially when watching television, narrating his every movement. Good night. I'm going to go wash my face. So it was like, just do what you do, dude. All of which are more cringy than truly irritating. He takes care of me insofar as I need it, but if this is the path I'm on in life, I'm gonna make it count, right? So, like I said, that it's like I'm gonna write this stuff down and publicize it. This is, but like I said, overall, I think he doesn't actually have a malevolent bone in his body, and I think he actually truly is. They call it anosognosia, so the idea like crazy people don't know they're crazy. For some mental illnesses and developmental disabilities, not being capable of recognizing that you're experiencing the disability, it is part of the disability itself. Not, it's not just that vague, stupid people don't know they're stupid, otherwise, like, they wouldn't be stupid, right? They'd modify themselves, or whatever. It's a little deeper than that, right? It's the part of the problem is being incapable of recognizing the problem. This is a very key point of my thesis and hypothesis about narcissistic personality disorder, is that a key element of it is being literally, physiologically, neurologically lacking the brain structures necessary to be capable of recognizing that you are missing something about social connections, and things. And so, that being said, that is the end of this episode. I feel like for a first one, to get a lot of this, like, housekeeping out of the way, um, it makes sense that it's a little bit longer than other episodes, which will basically just be reading through these now at this point. So, thank you to anyone who has been listening or has listened, I guess I should say. And I will hopefully see you and others in the next one.